to episode 2 of the Battery Mates podcast. I'm Dave. That is Sean. Sean, my man, what is going on today in the world of, in your world, in the world of you?
Not much, man. Not much. Still kind of reeling from last night. You know, it was the
Yeah,
it was the full definition of a roller coaster.
yeah. And if that's how the games keep going, I don't want to get off as long as there's W's at the end of them. Obviously, if there's losses, I'm not interested. But we definitely got a curveball thrown at us yesterday. We was around 6 p.m. We were texting each other and talking about how this was a disaster. I mean, how they were done for basically, and we were talking about how I'm talking like, don't be afraid to come in tomorrow with energy. Come in with frustration. Be upset. Figure out what you want to yell about to the world. I'm sure Braves country is going to be more than on your side. And now we're talking about a brand new show, a brand new series, and all of a sudden the Braves are right back in it, man. It's 1-1. It's the best of 3.
It is, man. And yeah, it was over the course of 70 minutes last night. You text me, man, this is a disaster. That's how the text message read. I was watching it. So it really was a disaster for a while. And, it didn't look like, we had much energy. Didn't look like there was a lot going on. The Braves' body language just didn't look good. And so it really was just kind of like, it did feel like a disaster. It felt, and after last year, I'll say it felt very familiar.
Right.
This is the exact same position that the Braves were in last year, except as far as the same position as far as the layoff, winning the division, kind of waiting that wild card round out, getting through that bye, and then going in and facing Philly, a division rival, and then dropping that last year it felt very familiar. So I definitely disaster was definitely the right way to describe how I was feeling, especially how I was feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed lost. It felt like one of those games, as a sports fan, I'm sure, you know what I'm saying, but, sometimes you watch your team play a game and you're like, okay, this is a close game. It can go either way. We might be losing, but I kind of feel like, one break comes our way, we're going to be in a good spot. That was one of those games where it was like, this game's over. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, there was never a point where they had one base runner, and it wasn't even from drawing a walk or getting a hit. It was from an error. It felt like, oh my goodness, they're going to get no hit. They're going to lose 12-0. They're going to go back to Philadelphia down 2-0. And then the Braves became the Braves we're all used to, and all of a sudden it's 5-4. And you have Michael Harris running around center field making incredible plays that end up maybe saving a series at the end of the day.
Absolutely. The Braves and the post game last night, and not to drown on about last night, I know we want to cover game 1 and game 2, but they talked about how that might have just saved the season. That might have just saved the series. We had some announcers and people talking about how if the Braves win the World Series, we're going to look back at this game, at this moment, the home run by Riley, the 8-5-3 double play from Harrison Riley. We're going to look back on that and say that moment saved the season. That moment propelled them to this. So it really was just an incredible turnaround. But you do have to take into account, even going back into game 1, 14 scoreless innings the Braves went between game 1 and game 2. You had longest scoreless streak of the season was 13, and the best offense arguably in baseball history, definitely in modern history, probably. You come out 2 games at home, 14 scoreless innings. It really just, it had a bad vibe to it, man. It had a bad vibe to it. So it definitely ended different than I thought it was going to. The 70-minute swing that happened It was incredible. It was probably one of the best games that I've ever watched myself, just because of just how big of a pendulum swung. You know,
Yeah, and that's something I really haven't heard a lot of people talk about. But I mean, that is it's one of those instant classic games. It's one of those games that, like I always joke that when I watch a playoff series, like for example, I don't want to upset Braves country, but like when the Nationals won the World Series, I remember watching the wild card game and some of those crazy games in NLDS, and I just thought to myself, I was like, man, the highlight film at the end of this is going to be incredible. Do I want them to win? Oh, maybe not so much. But like, I'm gonna watch the 20-minute highlight film that gets uploaded to YouTube by some guy I've never heard of before. It's gonna be phenomenal viewing. It's gonna get me. It's gonna, I'm gonna be at the edge of my seat for 25 minutes straight. And that's kind of one of those games that you feel that way. You kind of feel like, I'm 5 years from now. It's gonna be a balmy February day, and I'm gonna be like, oh my god, I need to go watch highlights from Game 2 of that series against the Phillies a couple years ago.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think going back into Game 1, the pendulum swung more than just Game 2. You had to go all the way back into Game 1. And Strider was who you wanted Strider to be in Game 1. Strider goes 7 innings, 8 strikeouts, 2 runs. Only one of those are earned. Only gave up 5 hits and 2 walks. Like, he gave you the game that you needed to get. And if you're a Braves fan, you come into that game and if somebody tells me Strider's going to go 7, he's going to strike out 8, he's only going to give up 2 runs, how do you feel about your chances? I'm like, with the offense we've got, perfect. We're not facing Nola. We're not facing Wheeler. Like, we crush lefties. I'm like, great, perfect. We're good. That's gonna be a 6-2 ball game. We're going into Game 2 riding high. Somebody tells me that. And then you have the Phillies have 7 pitchers throw a combined shutout. First time all year the Braves were shut out at home. They did not get shut out at home at all until Game 1 of the NLDS.
And so it
really, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like, man, so that pendulum that swung in Game 2, it was way over to the other side because of Game 1 and because the Braves looked dead in Game 1. It wasn't where Game 1 was 7-6 and it was a battle and it was a dogfight and then the Braves came out flat because Wheeler was dealing. It was the Braves got shut out by 7 pitchers. A 7-pitcher combined shutout. That's a hard thing to do, to have all 7 guys come out of the bullpen and their stuff work. And so I think that really, Game 1 really set how far that pendulum really swung there in the last 4 innings of Game 2.
Yeah, and momentum is a very real, very true thing. And we're going to talk about Game 3 later on. Don't go anywhere. We'll be talking about that at the end of the show. So you have to hear us talking baseball in between. I'm so sorry, but we'll be talking. You talk about not getting Nola in Game 1. Well, Nola's waiting in Game 3, and we don't know who Snit's throwing out for Game 3 for the Braves. It could be anybody. We might get the call. Who knows? I'm not on the roster myself. I don't know if they brought you on. I think they were thinking about it, weren't they?
Yeah. So, yeah, it really is. You don't know who the Braves are getting in Game 3. I've got a couple of maybe guesses as to who's going to go in Game 3, but we're not going to find out until tomorrow. And so I think we just kind of wait and see, and we hope that Game 1, not getting that one against Suarez in the bullpen, doesn't come back to bite us. But I think there's no arguing the Braves got the momentum going into Philly this weekend. This week. There's no doubt about that.
And with momentum being a real thing, you have the Braves looking to take 2 of the 3 coming forward here. The other National League series is the exact opposite, where you have the lower seeded team, the team that I saw you Braves Twitter. I saw you clamoring to face the Diamondbacks in the NLDS. Why don't we get the Diamondbacks? We should face the Diamondbacks. Well, I think we lucked out as Braves fans because the Diamondbacks look really good and they have all the momentum in the world. I mean, they've just ran through Corbin Burns and Freddie Peralta and Clayton Kershaw. They made Bobby Miller look bad yesterday. They have all the momentum in the world, and it seems like that has to only go 3 games, right? I mean, Diamondbacks have to win game 3, right, Sean?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Diamondbacks take game 3. Mostly because Kershaw, Miller, combined 2 innings pitched out of your starters. Kershaw gets 1 out, gives up 6, I think. Miller goes an inning and 2/3 after giving up 3 runs. They had to go to Gratterall in the 2nd inning last night. So you're a lot of innings on your bullpen. Your starters haven't looked good, and you've got to trot out Lance Lynn in game 3.
Lance Lynn starting for the Dodgers. Oh no.
Yeah. So you've got the Diamondbacks. Last I checked, the Diamondbacks haven't even announced their game 3 starter yet. And I still think you've got to be the favorites if you're going up against Lance Lynn. So
you
I've got to say the Diamondbacks are going to do it. I can't see the Dodgers winning 3 straight. Their offense hasn't looked great.
Mm-mm.
Their pitching has been awful. Mookie has all but disappeared. So I just think that the Diamondbacks are going to be a little bit too much for them. I don't know. Call me crazy, and maybe that's me hoping that Atlanta figures it out and we get the D-backs in the CS instead of the Dodgers. So, maybe that's a little bit of favoritism there too. So,
but here's the other question right now is, at this point in time, we're recording, what is it, the 10th of October. It's 7:45 p.m. The Braves and the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks and the Phillies have an off day. Do you really prefer that the Braves face the Diamondbacks right now, or would you rather face I think I'd rather the Braves face the Dodgers. I mean, even when they were a little bit healthier a few months ago, the Braves walked into LA and just stomped on the Dodgers. I mean, they just, made that race for the number 1 seed look crazy. There's nothing going any after that point. And with the way the Diamondbacks are hitting the ball and some of the injuries to the Braves staff, I mean, is this really the better matchup facing Arizona right now?
If I have a weakened staff, which some would say the Braves do now, they did activate Morton off the IL today. So that's one of my bold predictions of the week. We have a phantom IL stint tomorrow. Morton comes back and starts game 3 tomorrow in Philly. But if I'm going into a series with a banged up pitching staff, do I want to risk the Dodgers getting hot as deep as that lineup is, or do I want to face the Diamondbacks offense and be like, at some point they're going to revert to the mean a little bit, you would think. They're a good team, yes, but how much of it is the Dodgers have been bad, especially at the pitching staff, versus how good the Diamondbacks have been. So nothing to take away from the Diamondbacks. But if I'm going in with a banged up staff, if I don't know that Fried's going to be able to throw two or three games, in the CS if he needs to, if we don't know what we're going to get with Morton, Kyle Wright's already on the IL for the 60 days, so he's out. Elder's not been very good. He's got a 5+ ERA since the break. If I'm going into an off and have to face an offense and I have to figure out how to win 4 games against an offense with a banged up staff, I think you got to try to take Arizona, because if LA reverts to the mean, that's a 100-win ball club over there that has a really good offense.
Yeah, I think I'm higher on the Diamondbacks than most people, to be quite honest, because I look at that lineup. That lineup is, to me, maybe just as deep. I mean, you think about Christian Walker is one of the more underrated players in baseball, I think. Ketel Marte, phenomenal player, all-around guy, does anything you need. Corbin Carroll is the real deal. They have Lourdes Gurriel. They have Alek Thomas, who gets hot. They have Gabriel Moreno behind the plate. I mean, to me, the lineups are the same. I see what you're saying, I think, but to me, I'd almost rather face the Dodgers lineup with a banged-up pitching staff than the Diamondbacks. I get it, but again, especially with knowing that Mookie Betts has kind of been in the playoffs in the past as well, I might prefer to face the Dodgers and say, okay, if Max Muncy's going to come up and hit 5 solo home runs against me, he's going to beat me. But I also think Max Muncy, if the Dodgers go back to their mean, could go 2 for 25 in the series.
Yeah, and I think the other part of the coin is you can't pitch Zach Gallen every game. You're going to have, and if you're facing the Braves lineup, which staff do you think, even if you get an average Kershaw, who's not been good in the playoffs either, you still got to face Kershaw. You still got to face Miller. Like, they've got a really good bullpen. The Dodgers have had a pretty good bullpen this year. Got Gratterall. You've got some arms out there that are going to be a little bit harder to face, I think, top to bottom. You're pitching a 7-game series against an offense that's as deep and as explosive as the Braves. I kind of trust us to get to the Diamondbacks, game 3, game 4, game 5 starters and their bullpen maybe a little bit more than, the Dodgers and if their bats get going, how many times does Kershaw give up 6 in a third of an inning? How many times you have to pull Miller in the second? So I think it's kind of a two-sided coin for me.
For sure.
I do feel like whoever comes out of the Phillies-Braves series has got to be the favorites to go to the World Series.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter which of the two. I mean, the Phillies, I get why Braves Twitter doesn't want to face the Phillies. The Braves are phenomenal, but the Phillies are just as good. And the Phillies, they spend their money differently, but they're one of the only teams that can keep up with the Braves as far as depth because, no, they didn't, sign all their young guys to long-term deals. They really haven't built up too many young guys. They have their Bryson Stott for sure, but they import talent in, pay them whatever they want. Oh, we want Bryce Harper. We're going to get Bryce Harper. We want JT Realmuto. We'll just trade some pieces to get JT Realmuto. No doubt, they can keep up with the spending of the Braves because the Braves just spend less smarter. But either way, these two teams going at it in this NLDS matchup, they got to be the favorites for sure, like you mentioned. And from there, I mean, the Astros look really good right now, but even they showed that the Twins kind of punched them in the mouth game 2 and kind of felt like, they're beatable for sure. I mean, it's not like the Braves haven't done it in the World Series, 2 years ago anyways. So, I don't think anybody's worried about can the Braves beat the Astros in a 7-game series. But, looking at across the American League, it really looks like an all Texas matchup is going to be happening. And I think that the Phillies, the Braves will probably be a favorite over whoever makes it out over there as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you saw Texas is up 6-0.
Oh, it's 6 now.
Texas is well on their way, up 6-0 in the top of the third. You got Eovaldi on the mound. That game might sound rich coming from me after last night, but I think Texas is gonna go ahead and close this one out.
It was fun, Baltimore. We had a good time.
Yeah, it was, and so I think it is an all Texas matchup in the CS over in the American League. You've got the Astros offense is really good. It just is. And they've got probably the hottest hitter in baseball right now, Yordan Alvarez, who's just
so good. He's just so good.
He's so good. He's so good. They said it in the broadcast today. I was watching. And this statement is not comparing the two. They made sure to put that little asterisk on there, but they said at some point he's got to get the Bonds treatment. You're playing him in the playoffs. At some point, you just say, I'm not pitching to you. I don't care the situation. I don't care the scenario. You are not going to beat me. And I think you just have to do that at some point with Yordan. So I definitely think those two series are probably...
Right now.
Right now. I definitely think those two series are in hand. Can the Twins come back and win that series? I think they've got the talent to come back and do that. I think their pitching's pretty good. but the Astros got to Sonny Gray today, and they can get to anybody on that staff. So I definitely think the Astros and the Texas Rangers are well on their way. I think the D-backs win, and then that kind of leaves what happens with Philly and Atlanta to round out that CS.
Yeah, and as mentioned, we'll get to the predictions for the rest of the series in just a second. But I do want to transition over to one of our mainstay segments. Sean, I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. Last week, you gave us a prediction, a bet. I think we told people to put money on something last week, and I don't remember if that hit or not.
So the over under on Strider was 8.5 strikeouts. He got 8. I said to bet the over. It was right there. But
Snit, you couldn't have left him in for one more batter.
Right, one more guy, right?
Come on, are you not listening, man?
Yeah. So I was close. I was close. This week, I think there's 3, what I would say notable lines. I guess kind of one player prop that I like, Ozuna, half a hit. The over is minus 230. But he's hit safely in almost 70% of the games he's played this year. And when you think about how bad he started,
right,
most of that 70% is going to be the last, the month before the All-Star break on. So he's probably hitting safely in a much higher clip than that, in the last 3 months. So I think that one's kind of a slam dunk as far as that goes. Nola 4.5 Ks is the over under on that. Over is at net, minus 145, unders plus 110. 3 games against Atlanta this year. He's went 6 every time. He struck out 7, 5, and 8. So I think you probably take the over on Nola at 4.5. And then Braves money line is plus 100. So Braves are 7-5 as underdogs this year. So what's crazy is that they've only been the underdog 12 times this year.
Yeah, that didn't register at first. I was like 7-5. Okay, wait a second. Yeah. Whoa.
So 7-5, according to DraftKings, what I looked at, they were 7-5 as underdogs this year. They're also 5-1 at Citizens Bank Park this year. So they're 8-5 versus Philly overall. Set 5-1 at Philly. So I think you take the Braves money line, Nola over 4.5 strikeouts, and Ozuna over half a hit.
I might do a little same game parlay and just start printing myself money. I mean, these seem like locks, man. It's good stuff.
Absolutely.
Let's jump into the let's talk about these next 3 games. I mean, we've kind of been dancing around the topic the whole time. We got these 3 games coming up, but I mean, it's time. I'm going to give you a statistic, actually, my stat of the week to jump into this because I think it's so important. We talked about game 2 and the incredible way it ended, and Michael Harris makes this great play out in the field. He's been, you haven't heard his name at all because he's really been, I don't want to, ruffle no feathers here, but he has one of the worst batting averages in postseason history right now. He is 1-for-21. That's my stat of the week. Michael Harris, if he gets close to his norm, think about they scored 5 runs in the last 3 innings yesterday, or 4 innings.
4 innings,
yeah. What if they can get one of their lower end of the lineup guys like Michael Harris going? Even if he's batting 275, that's still better than his current batting average, which is .048. When I have to use points and zeros, we're not in a good spot. He's really been struggling to hit the ball in the playoffs. It's been over 2 years now. This is a career 1-for-21 in the playoffs. I think when you think about how everybody is so cold right now, kind of highlighted by that, I really struggle to see how Atlanta doesn't end up scoring 5-6 runs every game the rest of the way against the Phillies. I mean, they had their blow-up game. They had a second blow-up game that they were just, were so talented that they just ran right through and said, nope, we're just going to make it happen regardless. And I think that with the momentum, I don't see how it comes back to Atlanta, to be honest. I think Atlanta wins these next two and is ready to move on. But what do you think? What do you think? And maybe what's a key or two you're looking at to get you to that point?
So I think tomorrow the biggest thing is what route do the Braves go with their starter and how does he perform? If you can go out there, I wouldn't be surprised to see my bold take of the week last week was game 3. If the Braves are up 2-0, they would start Hand as an opener to pitch through Harper. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go with a lefty out of the pen, Hand, Minter, something like that to open, try to get through Harper, and then turn it over to Smith Shawver or Elder and try to get through the batting order another time and a half, and then just kind of piece it together from there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Also, like I said earlier, Charlie Morton coming off the IL. Only way he can come on the roster is if somebody, pitcher, gets injured. So if we see a, surprise IL stint from somebody, then maybe we see Morton. Obviously, you've got Bryce Elder down there. If you get first half Bryce, sub 2.5 ERA, all-star Bryce Elder, keep the sinker down, keep the ball in the park, keep the ball in the strike zone. Then I can definitely see Atlanta taking these next two. But realistically, I feel good however it shakes out because you've got Strider lined up for game 4. So, yes, we get Nola tomorrow. Strider's back on normal rest for game 4. Fried is back on normal rest for game 5. So you've got your two horses going at the end. Whereas even if Philly wins tomorrow behind Nola, who realistically and statistically, outside, if you take away his appearance against the Marlins this year, he's 2-2 with a 4.91 ERA in 5 playoff starts. So he hasn't been great in the playoffs. Right. He wasn't last year great in the playoffs. Right. But even if they do get Nola, if they get the win behind Nola, Philly does, rather, you've got Strider against whoever they trot out, maybe Suarez again. Yeah. You don't really know who Philly's going to go with. Rob Thompson, the manager for the Phillies, said that depends on how tomorrow goes. So, kind of how does that shake out as far as Thursday goes? So I like Strider in that. Fried, despite the fact that he wasn't at his sharpest, he did what he had to do to keep the Braves in the game.
Yeah.
You have an offense like the Braves. Philly, this is game 2. Quick gun on a game 2 because this plays into why I think the Braves are good in games 3 through 5. Fried went 4 innings pitched. He gave up 6 hits, 4 walks, only 3 strikeouts, and only gave up 3 earned runs. So he battled. He grinded. He did what he had to do. That was his first competitive game in 18 days. So out of the routine a little bit. So I think Fried is better in game 5 at home than he was in game 2 at home. Wheeler, Braves kind of did to him what they always do to him. He pitches really well through 5-6 innings, somewhere in there, and then they tend to hit him a little bit after that. That third trip through the lineup isn't always good for Wheeler against the Braves. So I like that matchup in game 5. The Braves bullpen in game 2, 5 innings pitched, 3 hits, 3 walks, 4 Ks, only 1 run, and it was unearned in game 2. Their bullpen is going the right way. So I think with the way the matchups line up with pitching, as good as the Braves have been at Citizens Bank Park this year, I just think that you without even taking into account the momentum, you've got to think the Braves have the advantage. And then you've got to think like the Phillies through 6 1/3, or through 6, we'll say through 6, the Braves were dead. The Phillies had the foot on the throat, ready to go. They go 2, they left 11 men on base, 2 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Harper, Turner, Realmuto, and Stott go 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position yesterday. Have every opportunity to put the Braves away. Can't put them away. They give up a hit to Acuna. Ozzie gets a hit. Trey Turner bobbles the ball coming back in. Acuna scores, and the floodgates open.
Yeah.
Darno homers in the 7th. Riley homers in the 8th. And then that fabulous play there to end the game that just absolutely gives me chills every time I even think about it. I bet I've watched that replay 150 times since last night and today. The Phillies had the Braves dead in the water, and they let the foot off the throat. And the Braves said, this is why you can't do that with a team as good as us. And so I think the bats come alive. I think the pitching holds up. And I think that we're just in a really good spot to take those. But I think we take, and I hope we take Game 3 and Game 4 in Philly. Don't have to see Zach Wheeler until March 28th next year. And we can put the Phillies and the NLDS loss last year. We can put it to bed, put it behind us, and we can go handle the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I mean, well said all around, and really, when we talk about, exactly that, we're sitting here talking about, Phillies took their foot off the throat. I mean, it truly feels like I can name you at least 3 Braves who, over any 2-game stretch of the season, you expect better numbers from. I mean, there's guys that are just not playing up to their standards. And to hear, that the Phillies are putting numbers, I mean, they're getting hits, they're forcing walks, they're getting guys on base, and they still can't do it. To me, that seems like an execution thing. Whereas with the Braves issues so far, I mean, I have not seen, Matt Olson hasn't driven in a run yet. Acuna makes that play yesterday, and that's the first time you really see Acuna and you go, oh, Acuna, that speed, that element that he brings that nobody else brings to the game. He finally got to show it. He only got to show it once. And again, this is one of the fun things about baseball is again, it all starts over, and we look at these very small sample sizes and try to make these gigantic assumptions from them. But seeing that these guys are so cold, and knowing that it's just 1-1, you have to feel so good. I will say I didn't like, was it Arcia giving Philly some bulletin board material? I didn't care for that.
So,
I think that you just,
here's my thing. I'll say this about that. Arcia doesn't speak a lick of English. Okay. There were multiple reporters around, and the one guy reporting on it is not a reporter. So it feels a lot like someone trying to stir the pot. Somebody has said that, look, he could have said Harris and not Harper. Like, how many things get said in clubhouses that aren't said to reporters? Like, so the whole thing is just weird to me, the way that one went. So I don't know. We'll see. But I don't think Philly needed bulletin board material. You've got Harper, who I'm sure feels plenty bad about kind of the base running blunder he made. Trey Turner with 2 errors yesterday. Like I said, the big 4 there, Stott, Harper, Realmuto, and Turner going 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. I think they've got their motivation. I think they've got their... I don't think they necessarily need that. Right. Obviously, the Citizen Bank Park is a tough place to play, a tough place to win as a visitor. But I do think that it kind of you may have woken up the giant yesterday. You may have got the sleeping giant out of bed, and all it took was that one play by Acuna. And that's kind of what this Braves team does, is it takes one little smack and then the floodgates open.
Right.
And so if he said it, he didn't say it to a reporter. He said it probably in a way where he thought, hey, I'm with the guys, whatever. If he didn't say it, then, it is just somebody stirring some stuff up and trying to get some clicks and whatnot. So I don't put too much stock into that. The Braves, all these guys are professionals. Right. Teams as good as the Phillies and the Braves. The Braves, is it in the back of their head about last year? Probably. We're human. It's going to be. But I genuinely think that they probably feed more off of what they did this season than worrying about what the team did last year. And so I think that's just kind of the way that teams like these two guys are going to do. And so, is it going to make a difference? I don't know. If that's a lousy excuse for us Braves fans. If we lose this series, if we want to blame it on Arcia saying "attaboy Harper," like we've run out of good excuses. We've run out of good things to do. So
hardcore coping.
I think I think it's a lot to do about nothing. It's a Braves off day. Braves Twitter is notorious for generating clicks for people, and they know when they want engagement, let's just talk about the Braves a little bit and talk about them negatively, or let's say something they didn't say, or however you want to do it. And so they know that they're going to get that. So what was it? I don't know. I think it's much to do about nothing, but I guess we'll see. That's why we play the game between the lines.
Braves Twitter, we love you for that, by the way. That's why we.
Yeah, absolutely.
We wouldn't.
I mean, I did it. I did it on whatever. I don't even remember who it was that said it now. When they said that they almost placed Corbin Carroll above Matt Olson on their MVP.
You were heated about that one. I remember. I saw a tweet. I got a text. I got everything.
And it was all because he used the WAR argument, and William Contreras was as close to Corbin Carroll as Corbin Carroll was to Matt Olson in WAR. Only thing Corbin Carroll was better than Matt Olson in, I think he had a .002 higher batting average and obviously stolen bases. Matt Olson won everything else. So again, I think it was another thing where it was like, hey, let's poke Braves Twitter on a day off because they've got nothing better to do. So we get pulled into those a little bit, and sometimes we feed the fire, but that's all right. That's what Twitter's for, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot to think about before we record next week. Kind of to keep you guys in the loop, we are planning on, as of right now, once a week until maybe we need to add a second one. We get thousands and thousands of listeners and people are depending on us. Who knows? Maybe we'll be twice a week, but we're looking at recording Tuesdays, episodes out Wednesdays and Thursdays. We got ideas in mind for off-season content. I got games in mind, and we got weekly activities and stuff like that. So we appreciate the support right now. Just know it gets bigger than just us talking about a couple baseball games moving forward.
Yeah, and we could, obviously, by this time next week, you're talking the DSs are over, and you're one game into the NLDS or NLCS, excuse me, and 2 games into the ALDS. So, we're going to be talking about a completely different set of stuff here when we get here next week. So, but yeah, Dave, so I think for me, I wrap my predictions. I think it's definitely the Braves, D-backs, Astros, Texas. And I think by this time next week, Braves are up 1-0 in the NLCS, and Houston and Texas are 1 game apiece.
I got Braves up 1-0 on Arizona by the time we record next week, but I have Houston up 2-0. I think Houston is going to win the next 5 games, actually. I know the Rangers are hot, but I think playoff Houston's a different animal. But they don't scare Braves fans. We've already taken them on once, and I feel like the team can do it again. But I think next week we'll walk in. I think Braves are up 1-0, and I think that Houston is well on their way to another trip to the World Series myself.
Sounds good to me, man. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah, I think it's a good time. Right around 35 minutes or so. That's the other thing I want to mention. We're trying to keep it kind of a little bit smaller. We don't want to talk to you guys for 4 hours about baseball, because we could.
Not that we couldn't, but we don't want to. So.
Yeah. So I just want to we'll just say log off and say thank you so much for joining us today on the second episode of the Battery Mates podcast. We will look forward to seeing y'all next week. In the meantime, go Braves, and y'all have a good one. All right.